Welcome to the V2ZZI channel, and one of the discussions that ham radio operators often have is about antenna tuners. And of course, most hams, if not all hams, will use a antenna tuner at some point when they are transmitting. Now, there's a lot of false ideas about antenna tuners out there, and there's one thing you got to understand, that is the general idea of an antenna tuner. It doesn't tune your antenna. It's actually the wrong name that we're giving these devices. They should actually be called impedance matchers. Why? Because what they actually do is not tune your antenna so that it resonates perfectly. It simply matches the impedance of the antenna system and your radio. In most transceivers, the impedance is 50 ohms. Antennas will have impedance that will vary depending on the type of antenna you're using. Some are actually close to 50, and you'd be surprised a good antenna system might not even need an antenna tuner. An example of that is my Yaesu. If I actually remove the antenna tuner and check my standing wave, my SWR, it's actually on most bands below 2 to 1, which means that without a tuner, it's already pretty respectable on most bands. Not a lot of them. Some of them are worse, but I could operate on many bands without tuning, actually, and it would be okay. An antenna tuner is mostly there to please your radio, because what happens is that if your radio's the standing wave is too high, what happens is that there's a lot of that reflected energy that could create more heat in the transmitting system of your radio, and that could damage, technically, the power, the RF power amplifier. Now, the antenna tuner is there to match that impedance so that the maximum amount of energy is actually being sent out rather than dissipated into heat. But it is still dissipated in some way because it doesn't make your antenna better. So if your antenna is at the edge of what an antenna tuner can actually tune because it's not really good, it's still not really good. So don't go thinking adding an antenna tuner makes your antenna system better. It doesn't. And that is one thing that a lot of people think, well, I tune my wire and now it's best. No, it's not. It's still a crappy wire if it's really not matched right. So that's why your antenna needs to be well built from the start. It already needs to have a very low standing wave and be as close as possible to the 50 ohms your receiver wants, because that's what is going to make your antenna really good. The antenna tuner is there to help. It's there to help your radio mostly. Now, what's the difference between an internal and external antenna tuners? Well, internal tuners of radios like my Yaesu FTDX10 have a certain limit. Well, every antenna tuner has a limit as to what it can tune. But some antenna tuners are better than others and can actually match really, really far off systems so that you can still use them. But, to the extent of the fact that that antenna system is so crappy that even though you'll be able to transmit, say, 160 meters on a system that doesn't resonate at all there, you won't be pushing out a lot of power because it really doesn't match it very well. So external tuners usually accept a wider range of tuning capabilities, so you might be able to transmit on a band that an internal tuner of the radio itself will not be capable, and often it has other features that you won't have in standard internal tuner. Like you could have more than one antenna output, you have capability of maybe more than one antenna, and you might have ways to kind of tune or at least match systems that technically would not work and would never be acceptable on an internal tuner. So the other thing also is very often you'll use an external tuner which will tune anything at any frequency, where your internal tuner will often tune to the bands, the amateur bands only, because it's designed for that. Your radio is designed to do just that. But the external tuner might actually be able to tune anything from 1.8 to 30 megahertz. That also is another thing about, if you do the Mars mod on a radio sometimes, although a lot of internal tuners will tune, you might actually be better off with an external tuner and that type of modification, because now you're transmitting everywhere, including bands that your antenna system isn't really resonating very well. But remember that you need to focus on a good antenna system first, because antenna tuners are not miracle devices. All they do is match an antenna system's impedance. And that means if your antenna is crappy, you're still transmitting on a crappy antenna, whether you're using a tuner or not. If you enjoy my videos, please subscribe, give us thumbs up. Thank you for watching.